Hello and welcome to What Are You Saying? #Ways, where we talk about topics in the news as it affects us all. I'm Uti Elu and today I'm joined by the gorgeous Mercy. How are you doing today, lady?
Very well, thank you, and it's good to see you. I missed you last week.
I know, right? Everybody was greeting me when I came in today and I was like, oh, what's going on? And then I remember that I wasn't here for, was I here on Tuesday? I can't
No,
even
you
remember
weren't.
now.
I'm not sure you were.
But yeah, so it's good to be back on
Yeah.
set as always. How's your week been going so far?
It has been very eventful, very stressful, but however, we just find a way to navigate and, just stay alive.
One foot in front of the other. I think
Exactly.
that's the best approach to life at the moment. Someone sent me a video on Instagram from the content creator. I think her name is Maraji. And she was talking about how she's tired of adulthood. And she listed in such well articulated.
I think I've seen that video.
And she kept on. And there's a point where she said, they say you should cook with good oil. And I was like, that is me. I mean, it was so relatable, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking two stories today, and both of them just show that, man, it's tough right now.
Very tough.
If you could radiate warm feelings out to all Nigerians right now, because outside is outsiding.
It's outside, it is hot.
It really is. But, we will keep lending our voice to the conversation, hopefully getting people to see things differently, to make informed choices and really understand, the things that are impacting us as Nigerians. I think it's very, very important
Very, very.
that we try and give a balanced view to a lot of the things that are happening, because sometimes a lot of it just feels irrational. You're like, you know how when if you've ever ridden on a roller coaster, 1 minute you're like this, and then it just changes direction, whips you around. That's what's happening right now. You're like, you can't even catch a breath. Things are just moving.
Very fast.
They're moving very fast. And I think it would be unfair to say, let me not say unfair. It would be unbalanced to say that some good things are not also happening. But they've gotten so lost in all the noise of all the negativity and
That's going on.
Yeah, and people really are struggling. But, we're here, and I think put one foot in front of the other. If we can manage just that.
So for me, it's the same thing as saying, I try to leave. I was having a conversation today with one of my friends on the phone, and I remember her trying to tell me, you need to do like this, you need to start thinking of 5 years, 10 years. I said, no, I'm not thinking of 10 years right now.
You've got to get through today.
I want to survive.
Yeah.
I just want to get through today. I'm not thinking about, please don't tell me. And that's the truth. I'm not thinking about 10 years right now. I just want to survive the moment. I just want to be able to go through today and then go through the next day, gradually, because I feel like if I start thinking about 10 years, then I might probably just lose it entirely.
You literally, you won't, it's that kind of thing where you think about it and you start to hyperventilate, you start
Exactly.
you just, you can't see that far ahead because, it's just a little dark right now.
Exactly. But, there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And I'm holding on to it's darkest before the dawn, so the sun is round the corner and, we'll feel it soon. But here's what we found as today's quote. The grass is always greener on the other side. The grass is not always greener on the other side, rather. It's greener where you water it. I had a former boss. Her own version of this was not quite as polite, but it was the same thing, It always looks better where you're not. But we never stop to process and think about how much work or what is happening on the other side. We just always think where I'm at is not it. And, if I can just get over there, things would be better. And then you get over there and you realize, perhaps maybe where I wasn't so bad. So I think the thing for it, again, is to be balanced. There's pros and cons, whichever side of the grass you're on.
Exactly.
That's what it is for me.
You couldn't have put it, differently, right? And for me, that has always been one of my favorite and easy quotes. But over time, I found out that, the grass is always greener on the other side. But most times, just a different shade of green. That's what it is. Because you could literally think that, it's a certain shade until you get it, this is not the green I thought it was. It's a different kind of green. And what that has taught me is that, sometimes we think that when we get just a little more, we get to the other side of the divide, then, we're just going to be happy or something else is going to happen. But that's never really going to happen, because when you get to the other side, there's literally something else. So there's always that feeling of not being satisfied. You want more, and then you're thinking, what if I get to the other side? So it's a rat race. We never get there.
That's absolutely what it is.
And then I found out that,
It's
the best way to live is just to, leave.
Be content. It's just, that's the simple
the
way
little
to put
moment,
it.
just live life.
To be
just
content.
leave it.
Yeah. So with an increasing number of Nigerians seeking greener pastures outside their homeland, we explore the multifaceted challenges they face, from the pressures of cultural assimilation to the harsh realities of deportation. The Nigerian diaspora story is one of both struggle and resilience. It's our ladies' night out, and Mercy and I will be discussing Diaspora Dreams, the Nigerian experience abroad. And when we open our phone lines, we'd love to hear what you have to say. But first, let's take a quick break and we'll see what we found in the news. Please stay with us. You're still watching Ways, the World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development, celebrated on May 21st, emphasizes the importance of cultural diversity in fostering dialogue, mutual understanding, and sustainable development. The Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy, Ms. Hannatu Musa Musawa, has urged Nigerians to celebrate the country's cultural diversity, highlighting it as a source of strength and unity. In her address commemorating the 2024 World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development, she emphasized the importance of appreciating and promoting Nigeria's rich cultural heritage, as well as recognizing its potential to drive economic development, social and mental well-being, and national unity. One of the quotes that I have on Ways, one of my proudest moments. In fact, I don't think I said it first on Ways. I think I said it first when I was on radio. But I always talk about the strength in our diversity, our uniqueness, our power as Nigerians is actually our diversity. I mean, sadly, in current times, it feels like it's pulling us aside, tribal lines, or, religious lines, where we seem to be falling through the cracks everywhere. But if we really embrace our differences and see how we compensate for each other, or we all blend together, right? I know there's a lot of history and there's a lot of ways that people say that it's not, but I think that if you even just take the three big tribes, right, we all bring something different to the table. But I think we've lost sight of that, and now everybody's fighting for their corner. There's really nobody's seeing the beauty of that diversity anymore. On Sunday, was it Sunday? Yes, on Sunday, I think it was the Lagos State Ministry of Arts and Culture, I think it is. I want to remember now. They had a soup festival, and I mean that was so good. Like soups from every single state. Like there was a lot of there was a lot of soup, and it was really, really good. To see the cultural dances. And I remember as a child growing up, there used to be this show on NTA where you had they used to show the cultural dances from all the different tribes in Nigeria, and it used to be so much fun to watch. I mean, then you didn't have all this distraction of internet 24/7. You waited till, was it 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock for the TV stations to come on? Yeah. But it was such a rich way of being able to experience, the different cultures from around Nigeria. So it was such a reminiscent experience for me on Sunday to see that. So I think it's a good thing to have, considering the challenges we have, to have a day where we're focused on that, to dialogue, because I think the ability to dialogue and talk through our problems is also, social media has eaten away at that.
Exactly, and I think that, these principles are very universal. They cut across every phases of our lives. I mean, every endeavor, so whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the family, whether it's in what sort of relationship, dialogue, you call it communication, is very key and it's very apt. Absolutely. And like some of the pointers or some of the issues that you've raised, you talked about the issue of, respecting our differences. Imagine that we looked alike. Imagine that you were like me and I was like you. I mean, the world would be very boring. Imagine Jimmy was like me. Imagine, Peter was like me and every other person. And that's the thing we're talking about, respecting different cultures and values and opinions, and the fact that we're all different. We need to understand that, and that can happen if we don't have communications. But of course, I also get to appreciate the fact that some states, and you have different parts of the world where there are some cultural activities from time to time to showcase all of this, like what the Ministry of the what's it called again?
I think it
The
was
tourism ministry.
yeah, tourism.
Yeah, in Lagos State does. I mean, it's really very great. I've been seeing several of the activities, right? Well, I think that, like you rightly stated, it's important that we embrace our differences.
Absolutely.
You understand that, hey, this is what makes us unique. And then we're not going to be the only country in the world that is, that is diverse, and all of that. There are lots of other countries where that is the case, but they're still living together. We need to understand we're not the problem.
And I mean, we used to be like that, so there is hope that we'll hopefully, one day find our way back there. But for now, let's enjoy and celebrate on days like this. What did you find for us in the news?
Okay, so quick one. I found something which, I've been wrapping my head around, and I'm thinking, I don't know if the president and every other person, calling the shot for this country is also thinking in this direction. The fact that the United Kingdom government plans to offer 43,000 seasonal workers visa to the horticulture sector and additional 2,000 to the poultry sector, that's in 2025. But of course, the process will already start. The government is also saying that they're going to prolong the visa program for additional 5 years, extending it up until 2029. Now, this policy, in some ways, that is a plan of the government of the United Kingdom to address the labor shortage within the food supply chain by investing in technology to lessen the reliance. So this is more like let's buy time for farmers and all of that, and then for them to get with all of that. But whilst I saw this in the news, it really caught my interest, and I think it's also in sync with what we're going to talk about today, the issue of the Jacques syndrome, if you like to say, where people get to move from one point to the other for the sake of greener pastures and what have you. There were several concerns that I had, and some of the fact is that, well, whilst all of these policies, every other time you have this policy, because I think it's just natural. Human beings would always move. We've always been moving. Only God knows where my forefathers moved from. I probably, if you want to trace my history now, I'm probably from some part of the world, very far. So that has always been it. But the concern that I have, right, is that whilst this might be very, interesting, it might offer opportunities, there can also be negative impact, especially for the countries that will be on both sides, however you look at it. The fact that one of the issues that we've been grappling with over time is the brain drain. We know that that's been happening in the medical sector or other parts, and at this point in time, we really don't know. So that's also a huge concern, a burden, because if you look at population, it's a strength, it's also a weakness, especially if a population is not productive, it becomes a problem to a country. And so with all of this is that there might be a tendency that, if people begin to look at this, because Nigerians, we don't waste time, we don't see, we don't think, we don't.
Well,
most times, a lot of people don't go through the process, they just jump at it, and every opportunity to leave, especially when it's becoming very bleak and it's becoming more difficult by the day and by the second. So yes, these are some of the concerns that I have, thinking that if we have everybody moving away...
No, so I think we want to hold on to that. And when we jump into the conversation, there's so much more to break down on that. My story, both of them are what I would like to call breaking news and where we are right now. My first headline says CBN raises interest rate to 26.25%. The Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN has raised the interest rate by 150 basis points from 24.75% to 26.25%. Mr. Cardoso, the governor, announced this at a news conference earlier today during the 295th meeting in Abuja. Of course, this then represents the third consecutive time that the bank has raised this benchmark rate this year. So we are finding that between now and between 2022 and today, it has been raised 11 consecutive times. And this is really to fight the soaring inflation. But it is interesting to note that whilst they are increasing the NPR, the inflation rate has risen dramatically over the last 2 years from 17.71% to 33.69%. Now, they do urge us, or he does urge us, to give it some time, that it is working, and that we're seeing less, would I say, a more stable rate of increase in the price of some of our basic items, and that with time, this will slow down inflation. Of course, this makes the environment difficult or a lot harder for businesses. If you have loans, your interest rates are going to go up. I mean, it really is squeezing, let me put it this way. And for a country that is really dependent on SMEs, it does have, ramifications where we see, more and more companies not being able to cope and shutting down. And of course, that then increases unemployment. It's almost a vicious cycle. So we need the time to speed up and to be able to see the benefits of what is happening. But it is a very slow burn. And to come to, what would I say, to balance out that conversation, of course, my second headline speaks to the federal government proposing only a few hours ago 54,000 naira as the new minimum wage. Of course, this conversation has been going on for quite a while now with the Organized Labour, Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, have been trying to increase or to agree. We're at the tripartite committee, the increase of the minimum wage. So, of course, the federal government previously proposed 48,000, which was not accepted, and they've now opted to 54,000. The conversations are still ongoing, so this is a very new story. I said it's only a few hours old. Of course, this is juxtaposed against the 615,000 that the president of the National Labour Congress is asking for. So we watch this space, we see what happens, but that's an ongoing conversation because, I mean, in the face of all of these things that are happening, people simply just need to earn more. They need to be able to earn more. Well,
if we start with the fact that small businesses need to survive, they're the life wires, like the blood, what the blood is to the body. So I'm beginning to ask myself, who are the people, why do we have all of this kind of drastic policies, these policies that is driving us towards, we can actually see where we're headed. Who are the people formulating these policies? Is it that they don't understand the times, they don't understand what we're doing? Because it looks as if, as you said, we're just waking up. Right now, we don't know what's going to happen by the time we sleep and wake up. It feels like we're going to have another hit, There's so much, taxation, airport taxation, too much of, all sort of taxes.
There's all sorts of levies and taxes and charges and fees, we get
this
hits
is the
across
point where
all
you're
sides.
also increasing. So how with the issue of, the struggle with the energy sector not being very, it's not even functioning up to its optimal capacity. That's also a concern. How then will these businesses thrive? My question is, who are the people advising and formulating these policies? Are they in touch with the current reality? Are they connected? Do they live in space? Before all of these policies are formulated, do they really have like a think tank? Do they go out to, conduct this research? What is the end game at the end of the day?
I think it's the disconnect that is the problem. We are in a darker time where things are tougher. I think that you need to give, when you are in darkness, you're seeking the light, right? So you need to be able to give people that light in terms of telling the stories, because I think these things come out at different times, and as an average Nigerian, it's difficult to connect the dots. We're not, economists. We don't understand the nitty-gritty of these things. But if someone is committed, and I think that's where conversations like this and the media also have a responsibility, the government has a responsibility to tell its stories properly, you have to connect the dots, because if you are increasing MPR, then there are benefits to it as well, But then there are other things, like how are you supporting businesses? Perhaps there are loans that are now becoming available for these businesses. You're shoring up the gap in one way. So there's a lot going on. And of course, the negative things are going to be louder. Bad news travels fast. So it's the responsibility in terms of when you're managing a populace to tell the stories that, okay, on this hand, we've had to do this, and here's why. On this hand, here's how we're compensating. And I think that's what you're speaking to, in that we need to understand the connectivity. We need to understand the bigger picture. I don't want to feel like somebody's writing a policy in isolation. Like you're just hitting me from one side. I mean, you've got to give balance, right?
And then, because, the reason I'm asking is this, if we're looking at what's going on, for instance, we're talking about power. I believe that if the energy sector is fixed, if we have constant power supply in Nigeria, people will pay for it.
Yeah, so
that's not a problem.
There are things, but and so for me, it's even like the problem of the energy sector is a long-term one. For me, the gap is in the lack of understanding. Like, why have you charged me this levy? What is it going to fix? We had the saga with cybersecurity a few weeks ago. Like, why are you charging it now? What are you going to do with that money? What is so imperative now? So I think that's where the gap is. Because if I understand this, like you say, it's value for money, I'm going to pay and I want to get something. And if I feel like it's worth it, I'm happy to pay. I think that's where we are as Nigerians. But so I think we need to do a lot better in terms of telling our stories. But we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll jump right into today's conversation. Please stay with us.
One other factor that has fueled this inexorably is the almighty sea in the room, in the compunction. And what is the almighty sea? You and I know it. It is corruption in high places. A very grave disadvantage of a poor naira run like we have is that poverty will be exacerbated. Unemployment will go up the roof. You know, as a matter of fact, historically, as a student of economics, evidence has really confirmed that the trajectory of the poverty that I have just stated to you in Nigeria correlates loyally to the curve of the depreciation of the naira.
The phenomenon of diaspora dreams, the Nigerian experience abroad, highlights the complex realities faced by Nigerians who migrate in search of better opportunities, driven by economic hardship, political instability, and the pursuit of education. The Nigerian diaspora has grown significantly. While many find success and contribute to their host countries, others face severe challenges such as cultural assimilation, legal hurdles, and deportation threats. It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, right?
Is what I will
I know, right?
say. It's when we find the situation that our would I say our Nigerian citizens find themselves in, right? The discussion on the Nigerian diaspora and the myriad of challenges faced by those who are seeking a better life abroad is a challenge, right? But before we jump into that, I must remember to say we would love to hear what you have to say. Please remember to join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp message to 0818-036-038-4663. Yeah. The challenge that people in the diaspora face today is a difficult one. We're in the midst of the Japa syndrome, like you said. In fact, today I asked of someone who I worked with a few years ago, and they said, oh, she's relocated. And we say that statement now so casually. Every 3 in 5 people you ask about, oh, they're no longer in the country. And we've just accepted it. It's what it is, right? It's sad. It's frustrating. It's scary, right? But I keep asking, for me, it's all about root cause. What are the drivers? We just talked about the NPR. We talked about we're still arguing a minimum wage that is not even up to 50,000 naira a month. And you're asking yourself, how is someone supposed to survive on that when some people, their transportation bill just to get to work in those same 30, 20 odd days of a working month far exceeds that amount, right? So when I think about it, there's a large population of Nigerians today that if you gave them the opportunity and said there's free boat or there's free plane, they will literally overrun, the airport or the seaport, whatever the case may be, all trying to get out of Nigeria. And it's for one reason. They're just seeking a better life. They're seeking better opportunities. I mean, we're still having conversations about an inadequate power sector. So a utility as basic as power, We can't wrap our heads around it. Our education system is struggling. Our health sector is struggling.
Road infrastructure.
Infrastructure as a whole is almost non-existent. So you find that when you, I'm a strong believer in Nigeria, and I always say that given the choice, I will always remain in Nigeria. But the truth is, when you look at the circumstances out there today, even a blind man knows it's tough. A deaf man can feel that it's tough, So everybody can see what we're struggling with. It's clear as day. So these days, when people tell me that they're jackpotting, right? The part of this conversation that we're talking about today is the one that I always try to tell people. I didn't say don't jackpot anymore. That conversation is null and void. Be clear on why you want to jackpot, right? Because jackpot too is also feeling like it's a trend. Some people that you see, and for all intents and purposes and by all estimations, they're like, why are you jackpotting, right? But so for me, it's no longer, don't jackpot, we need to, make Nigeria great again, whatever, you want to call it. But the truth of it is, when you think about it, I'm not saying don't go. I'm just saying go the right way. Because we've seen many stories on both sides of the divide. Nigerians doing well in the diaspora, and there are even more stories of Nigerians who are struggling. I remember seeing I think it was a BBC documentary of a woman who had spent over $10,000 to secure her visa to the UK and got there and met a whole different story. And she was homeless, she was sleeping on the bus, she was going to food banks and collecting food that didn't need to be heated up, like canned food, and she was eating on the bus, sleeping on the bus. $10,000 is not child's play. By today's exchange rates,
It's like
that's almost what?
15 million.
Thank you. That's a lot of money, right? So if you're able to gather up 15 million, one side of the argument might ask, you know what you could have done with 15 million in Nigeria? But then when NPR rate is increased and, there's a problem.
So it's a very dicey conversation, very, very dicey one. But I like the angle which you are, looking at it. I like the angle which you are putting it. You can't tell people not to jackpot.
Yep.
But like you were saying, I like the fact that we started with that quote, that the grass is not as green as you think. It is where you water it. And I would say that the grass is not as green as you think. It's a different shade of green. So we need to understand that basically there's no country that has it all together. So you need to do your plus and minuses. You need to understand that you're going into a system that is well structured. And I think that the issue that we're having, because we're talking about the issue of jackpot and then deportation, we've seen that people are faced with a lot of illegalities. And it's not that these countries wake up and literally don't like your face and they want to send you away. That's not the case. In most of the cases, almost 100%, if I'm not mistaken, it's a case of, having to violate the immigration laws and all of the irregularities, not meeting up with, the rules and the regulation. Every country has laws. Every institution, everybody has laws that govern the system. And so in most cases, you find out that some people try to beat the system because you're coming from a system where things, there are laws, anyhowness, right? I borrow your word there, anyhowness. And you think that that's the case. You find out that it doesn't work that way. When they begin to find that there's a discrepancy with what you have stated, sometimes you could literally have your document saying a certain thing, and you, at the point of entry, you are saying a different thing, where there's no correlation with what your documents are saying. If it does not tally, then you are, they red flag you, and you're set aside. So yes, it's good to actually, want to travel. It has always been, the human instinct. It has always been part of humanity.
It's a human right to
migrate. Move, from one point to the other in search of greener pastures and what have you. But we're saying that before you do that, you need to, count the cost. You need to understand why you want to go. Because I've seen a lot of people who have decided to wake up. We've seen people, I've heard of stories, especially this period where there's a lot of distress sale. Because, I also deal in the real estate. And so you have people selling their properties, you know, people just wake up. I mean, for every time I find a property that is a distress
sale, it's the same story.
I begin to ask myself, for the first thing I ask is, why are you selling the property? What is the problem? And for most times, it should not be my business, right? But I want to know why you're selling it. And in most cases, you find out that the reason people are selling it is because they want to move away. That's an asset. So why do you wake up and sell your asset and move away?
Not in a country like Nigeria where those kind of assets appreciate on
Do you understand? So I think that, you know, the jackpot thing should be, you know, in strata. It should be a certain caliber of people that should, you know, wake up and leave. You can't just, you know, like I heard, this man was about like a 60-year-old. He sold his property for over 100 and something million, 60 million, 50 or 180 million, and you move away for a 60-year-old. What exactly?
You've spent your entire youth in your country. You've amassed an asset that is worth almost 200 million naira, and you decide to give it up at 60 to go abroad. I mean, by all estimations and ramifications, unless you have children abroad.
Even the kids that you have are still, you know, depending on you. They're still highly dependent on support for school fees and what have you. So I'm just saying that we need to think it through, because I've seen a lot of people who have left this country and they're still spending the naira.
The naira that they change, yeah, absolutely.
They're still dependent on the Nigerian economy.
It would be, right? Because there is an adjustment period, and that's the thing for me with Jackpot. I love what you said about there are certain people that fall into the segment that is right to migrate. If you are young, right, and ideally don't have family, broadening your horizons, going elsewhere, you know, perhaps maybe getting an education, getting some work experience, fantastic, right? If you are someone that has maybe 1 or 2 children, young family, yourself and your wife, maybe you've got your youngish, it's difficult, but again, perhaps doable. But when you are getting towards the latter part of your career, like for me, once you are in your late 30s, I don't think that the time that you should have gone has passed. This is my own assessment, because I've watched people migrate and I see, because, you know, when you do go abroad, to be honest, LinkedIn is rife with articles from people who are posting to say, oh, it took me 5 years, but I finally got to Google. It took me 8 years. I finally got into Microsoft. It is not a just go there and
walk in the park.
It's a walk in the park, right? It literally is, it can be a struggle, because assimilating into a new culture, sometimes you're, I'm speaking to a friend who's a former colleague actually, who is in Canada, and they formed a sort of a support group for people that, you know, move to Canada. And one of the first things he says they do is they look at your CV, they look at your skills, and they realize if you're going to succeed here, there are opportunities, but you must first, they call it retooling. You must go and retool. So you're going to have to go to school first and get some sort of qualification that is recognized here, that opens the door into the employment market for you. So it's not child's play.
And that's because over time, there's perception, because perception is, you know, is more realistic than facts. So the way you perceive me, the way I perceive you might just be, I could literally say you're rude, but that's not the case. The case is maybe you're not in a good mood. It could just be anything. Now, it's because of the perception that we have been sold, the life abroad. No doubt. They have better infrastructure. I mean, there are a lot of things that are going on for them. But we need to tell ourselves the truth. And for every other time, because I see the conversation that pops up on the social media space, and people tell you, oh no, you're just being very bitter. You don't want people to come. Stop discouraging people if you have the opportunity, or the opportunity, just, you know, move up and leave. That's entirely, you know, not correct. I'm saying that it's time that we begin to have the real conversation. We need to let people know that this is the reality. Because a lot of people think that when you just go abroad, you're probably going to be picking monies from the floor. Maybe you just go there and then there's a job waiting for you.
They're even thinking of they're thinking of it in the dollar, like, okay, I'm going to earn $3,000 a month. And they're converting it to naira, thinking, I can never earn 5.4 million naira here. So,
well, you've forgotten about the taxes and the bills that you have to pay.
What is left? Exactly. What is left after you've earned that money? And then what kinds of jobs will get you $3,000 a month? Do you have the right qualifications? Do you have the right experience?
Do you have the right skills?
Yeah, do you have the right skills? Are you going on the right visa that allows you to do that? So there's so many things to consider. There's so many things that people need to understand are crucial when you're making that decision. Whether, like I was saying, whether you have a family, your age, all of these things. Do your own assessment plan. Leave person A, leave your brother, your sister, your friend, your co-worker that told you, just come, just come. If you do just come, when you get there, you will rough it, be ready. Because I think it was Daddy Freeze, he's doing a series of videos, I've been seeing them on his Instagram, of talking to people who have jackpot and their experiences, and some of them wanting to come back. I think there was one guy who they had said had already come back, after selling his property and going and realizing. I always tell people, right, very, very many years ago, I said, in my estimation, there are two types of Nigerians. It's either you can live in Nigeria or you can't, right? It is better for you to know when you are young, right? And decide to go or stay. Even the people who have lived their entire lives in diaspora, then they think that Nigeria is the place to come and retire. Even that one too is a problem, right? Your calculations are inevitably wrong. What you think you're going to need to survive in Nigeria versus what it takes to survive in Nigeria is always different. But if we look at the story that, brought us to talking about this topic today, this was, I think, an 64-year-old man who is being deported, or he's fighting deportation to Nigeria after being in the UK for 38 years, right? In that 38 years, he's not been able to get a foothold. He's not successful. He's now older. He has health issues. So from the UK's perspective, right, he is a cost to the country because he's probably getting healthcare on the NHS, right? He hasn't worked in quite a while. He's saying that he was homeless most of the time. He can't count how many people he slept on their couches whilst he was in the UK. Exactly. So when you were younger, you didn't come back home. There was always the hope. And there's so many people who are caught in this basket. There's always the hope that eventually my visa will get approved, my visa will get approved. But the fact is, you've not been able to get a foothold for 38 years is somebody's life, right? It's a long time to just literally be hoping and hoping and hoping. And then your whole life passes. And now he's at risk because the things that have now happened to him, if you read the story, he's had issues with his lawyers, things that the UK government has now picked to say, oh, this was forged, this was false, and he's claiming he didn't know what his lawyers did. I mean, I've heard this story timeless amount of times. But for me, this is somebody who has now lost the better part of his life just to being able to remain in a country that he has not been able to do anything else for himself, right? A lot of people fall in this bucket. It doesn't mean that there are not a lot of people equally that go and succeed. But what this story reiterates for me is the awareness and planning and understanding of your reality and your situation.
That's the truth.
So that you don't waste time. If you go and you know that you go the right way for starters, get the right visa. But if you say, as Nigerians will say, at all, you say you want to, because people will go on a tourist visa, they will go in, and then if you go, find the fastest way to regularize yourself. I know it is difficult, and as I always tell people that the UK is a very tricky one because they change their rules every 5 seconds, right? Their immigration policy is there to fix the problems of their country, not to welcome you in. So they're not checking for you. They're checking for themselves.
But you also know that, I don't know if it's...
I think before you go into that comment, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Now, our parents who are pensioners and who are still alive at an inflation rate of about 30%, therefore means that in the next 5 years, if it's not tamed, if it's not curtailed, they will be losing about 150% of their earnings. Can you imagine that? Life expectancy naturally will go lower than 45. 50, 40, 48, 40, 50. People will not be able to feed, and then the younger ones that are supposed to be contributing adequately will then find themselves jackpotting.
So before the break, we began the discussion on the Nigerian diaspora experience and the myriad of challenges that Nigerians face when they japa. It's really an interesting conversation, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. Please remember you can send us a WhatsApp or SMS to 08180384663. Our phone lines are also now open. You can call us on 0702 5007749. Please remember to turn down the volume of your TV set so we can have a great conversation. So you were just about to jump in.
Yes, so I'm not sure if we're supposed to get to that part of the conversation now. Is, we're talking about the drivers. Why are we leaving? And as much as we know that we can't actually tell people not to move because it is inherent for us to move and it's within our constitutional right to move. But if you look at some of the driving factors, it's a cost that, Africa as a continent needs to sit back, and Nigeria, being the big brother of Africa, needs to begin to champion the cause. Why are a lot of people moving? I've had conversations with those in diaspora saying, if we had basic infrastructure, I mean, what would I be doing here if this was literally working?
Everybody there is missing Nigeria. Everybody's missing small chops. Everybody's missing amala. But the truth, you're so right, because if we even look historically, 2008, 2009, I think thereabouts, when we had the boom, oil was doing good, telcos were in, Paris Club debt was forgiven. People were flooding, it was the whole IJGB time. The trend was reversed at that time. And people came home. Why? I'm a firm believer that if Nigeria is right, there is no Nigerian that wants to be abroad. That's my own belief, because there's nothing like freshly fried puff-puff.
And
it's enough to get on the
fact that you can actually have, like roasted yam or roasted bole on the road.
Exactly. And there's
just
nothing
have a
like,
great time.
being in your own country,
And another thing again that's also great for us. I feel like a lot of persons who are outside struggle with the issue of the culture shock and all of that. Is that we have a culture of being inclusive. We're very inclusive. We live a communal life. That's how it's easy for me to stroll to your house and say, Uti, what do you have?
How far?
Enter your kitchen and then we're like, can I eat and all of that? But that's not the life. Over there, people live, a very individual, isolated life and what have you. So, but for me, I'm thinking that it's time, that we go back to the drawing board. Everybody gets back. We will never stop people from moving, but we're saying, why don't we even, get to a point where we are fixing the basic things that provide the necessary things that people need to thrive. And maybe, because I'm not sure that 10 years ago, this whole Japa syndrome was on high. We recently just started face 10 years ago. I'm not sure. People were traveling, but not,
Yeah, we go through it cyclically, up, down, up, down. It goes with the Nigerian economy. It does. But I mean, you're absolutely right. The way we find ourselves, every time we get to this part of the cycle, right, you find that, and it's surreal that we're having this conversation 4 years later. My first show, my very, very first show on Wiz, the topic was brain drain. And that was in January of 2020. And we're 4 years down the line, and even more people have jackpot in that time. I mean, every time somebody on my team says, boss, I want to have a chat with you, my first conversation, the first thing I always respond is, are you resigning? Are you jackpot? Like, I just want to prepare myself for the conversation. But that's the reality now. People are like, I'm going abroad. But I think for me, the main reason why this conversation is important to have is that we want to give the right perspectives. It is your human right to migrate. It is your human right to seek greener pastures, to do what is best for you. The conversation today is about how you make that assessment. It is very important that even as, and I think this is the part that I really want to hone in on before we close out the show, is even in the midst of this hardship, right, Nigeria still presents opportunities, right? I was having a conversation with someone around the what's the coastal, Lagos Calabar coastal road, and the perspective shocked me. He said, me, I want to start selling sand. He said, Shebi, they want to build. It's construction. He said, I'm going to start selling sand. And that is a unique viewpoint in that there is a lot of negativity around that story. There's been a lot. But one person just said, you know what? I see business opportunity.
Of
I
course.
want to start selling sand.
But you also know that Abraham Maslow, this Abraham Maslow theory of needs, you can't, move to a certain level if you have not been able to, been satisfied at a certain level. So, for instance, if my need for
Your
food
basic
has not
needs,
been met,
agreed.
well, what am I talking about trying to go to a university? I mean, that's like basic. So a lot of people are at the point where they're not even thinking.
I hear you, right?
Do you understand?
But
I also understand that, the people are seeing the light and there are opportunities. For instance, I'll cite one. I was really shocked when I saw that now you can open a shop, and now have sockets, and on
to
your
charge
generator.
Phone.
And people now come and charge. People are charging phone and now buy chargers.
So
and
the opportunities now exist.
I'm like, what's going on?
But if you can't see the opportunities, right? I mean, I've had so many experiences. Again, everything is somewhat tied to the coastal high road. Some people are having closing party. And some people are like, hey, as you have closed, the sun is rising somewhere else. Please shift to my business.
Exactly.
Right? But if you have a mindset, which is what I think a lot of Nigerians now have, when you see these conversations on social media, you hear a lot of people saying, it's hard, it's hard. And so people are like, Shebi, you have gone. I'm coming. Make I come first, and you can, anyhow, we'll rough it, right? So the reality of it for me is, you also have to be clear that there are opportunities here. You are talked about distress sales. For the person who has cash, this is a great time to acquire assets.
You buy high.
You get what I mean? You're buying cheap.
You're buying low and you sell high.
So these opportunities do exist. It is tough, but they do exist. And you have to have an open mind. Are you a glass half full or glass half empty person to say that I'm actually now able to do this? Secondly, a lot of people are using consultants. Do your research. Before you part with $10,000 or £10,000, this is money that some people will never see in a lifetime. Do your research. Don't just talk to people on this side of the divide. Talk to people abroad. Don't just talk to the people you know. Find other people that are impartial to your situation that can tell you the truth. Because a lot of people, you hear their stories and they go, they said I should come. This one said there's opportunity. I'm here now. I've spent all this money. I can't get to work. Again, there's a flaw in that process somewhere. Because you have to do your due diligence. If you're spending even a quarter of that money, you must do due diligence. Then when you now hear that, you're like, this is 15 million naira. You know what that could do for you today, even if you put it into a small business, even if you started grilling chicken on the side of the road.
Even if you can't even buy a property in Lagos, I'm sure you can buy a property somewhere. You can buy, an asset somewhere, go somewhere in Nigeria and get a property.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, but like I said, again, I would say, and I think we're still saying the same thing, that yes, as much as it's important to travel, we think that the perception that's been sold about, the life outside of Nigeria, it's not a true, story. People have actually made it look like as soon as you go in there, everything will just be okay. Crisp. Let me speak the street language. Everything will all soft. All soft everywhere. All soft. Soft like that. So I'm telling you. So to be very honest, I think that we need to understand that you don't just wake up and it's like the same thing that happens in Lagos. People think that when you come to Lagos, you pick money.
Exactly.
You don't pick money in Lagos. So
you hustle.
You work. It's the same thing outside. And that system is structured in a way that you have to work because if you don't work, you can't pay your bills. And nobody gives you free money. You don't even know what you're enjoying.
Your light. There's no beating the PHCN guy.
You don't even
they
know
will turn off your
lights. Let me even tell you, maybe we'll begin to highlight some of the things that happen here that don't happen over there. For instance now, if you own a house, if you live here, and let's say your rent is due, you haven't been paid salaries for 3 months or thereabout, you can actually beg your landlord and he can consider as, okay, I give you for 3 months, okay, I'm giving you 3 months, They don't do that. Nobody cares. When it's time for you to pay your bill, you pay your bill because you're working. You're supposed to pay your rent. If you don't pay, they kick you out. They kick your things out. And that's not a joke. So
there's
you can't
no joining lights.
No one you see that kind of stuff. They cut you off. They cut you off. There's something like you're going to Mama Kechi's house to go and say, please, can I have salt there? Do you have seasoning? I don't have. My own has finished. You can't. So there are a lot of good things that are going on for us here that you literally might think it doesn't mean anything until you get there, and then you understand that it is not as greener or as
Grass is not always greener.
So there are a lot of good things that are going on for us. Yes, we understand that we have a system where, things are not really working the way they should work. But I'm saying that those little things that you think don't matter, when you get over there, that's why you find a lot of people putting out the calls that tell you, people are depressed, people are feeling very dark, there's a lot going on. It's because you are experiencing a culture shock. The way you live your life in Nigeria is not the same way. I mean, things are, not as expensive. Sometimes I find that people, they buy stuff and they begin to convert it. They say, never. How do I have a haircut for 250 pounds? Am I mad? This is the conversation. I can never do that. You can't see the music clipper. But this is here in Lagos. You can just, depending on where you go to, you can, have a haircut 1,000, 2,000, depending on your status, and wherever it is that you patronize. So the point is, there are a lot of good things that are going on for us. Just like Uti had said, we need to begin to look inward. I feel that also has been a problem. Maybe in our curriculum, in our educational, system, we need to teach ourselves to become self-sufficient, because that's the thing also. As a country, we're struggling. We usually think that the best way out of our solution to always borrow. We need to run away. We always want outside is where our help
outside
comes
is
from.
better, imported is better.
We always think that outside is where our help comes. I'm not saying you don't need help. We all need help. Countries actually lean, on each other for all of that. But most times, should we always think about, looking for help externally? I think that has also, maybe in families, as we raise kids up, we need to begin to teach ourselves, how to be self-sufficient, look inwards to solve your problem before you begin to look for ways out. Because it feels like right now everybody's just looking for a way. If they, like you said, if you leave a boss here now, everyone will want to jump on it and go without thinking. When you get there, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? What exactly is going to become of you? So these are some of the conversations that we should have. Not necessarily to say that, there are a lot of people who are not abroad, who are not doing well. They are doing well. There are a lot of good things that are happening. Some people are prospering and so much is going on, but they actually, did their calculation. They did all of that. You need to do it the right way. So because it's really heartbreaking when you see stories of Nigerians and Africans in diaspora, you were living as a king here, and then you're on the bus station, you're begging, can I have £2, please? From where? And nobody's going to even answer you.
They won't even answer you. That's the thing. We have a comment here from Daniel Illo. It's so nice to hear from Daniel. It's been a while since I read a comment from our Ways regular fan. He says, good evening, my dear beautiful sisters of What Are You Saying? #Ways. Diaspora dreams the Nigerian experience abroad. Me personally, I don't mind people relocating to where they can be comfortable. But what is the guarantee that the place that you are relocating to is even better? The idea of relocating may not be a bed of roses, and the grass may not be greener on the other side. Trust me, people in the diaspora may not advise any of their family members to join them there, because it's not all that glitters is gold. There is no way that people who have relocated will not miss Nigeria. Surely they will miss Nigeria because of certain things. Now, wow, my dear beautiful sister, it's a long time no see. I really miss you on the show. Nice anchoring of the show, though. Thank you very much, Daniel. A couple of comments also from our online viewers. Great show, awesome show. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Jack Shea. We're very quickly coming to the end of today's conversation, and I think that we have we've set up the conversation nicely, hopefully to get people thinking about, Jakpa. I don't think, or how should I put it? I don't think that we should close out the show without talking about some of the positives. I mean, the diaspora in Nigeria is very critical. The amount of remittances and money that comes in from there, the amount of stories we hear. Nigerians, we're so patriotic in that sense. When we hear that a Nigerian abroad is doing great things, they've gotten a political seat, they are the first PhD holder in do you get what I mean? PhD holder in robotics. Those stories, they always pop up on my timeline, and I see them. So we've had, quite a few success stories, and if you go anywhere on social media, even if you can't find personal people to give you first-hand experiences, data is cheap. If you go on YouTube and Google Jakpa,
did you say data is cheap?
No, data is cheap.
Really?
Right now, data is cheap. No. There's 100 naira data, there's 50 naira data.
What can that do?
But it's cheap. That's my point. It's available. There's one thing to say I have 50 naira, you can't buy data. You have 50 naira, you can't buy data. If you go even on social media, on YouTube, you will find lots of people have put videos talking about the pros and cons of the experience. What I'm trying to say is that there's really no reason for you to not be adequately prepared, right? Even if you say, I don't know anybody, or I'm just go online. There are people that even now offer these services. Find a community. I mean, it's also warm to hear and lovely to hear that in some countries, Nigerians have built, communities where they help people to resettle and all of that. But the main crux of it is you're not going to go there and, how did you say it, everything's soft. It's not going to be everything soft overnight. It's not going to be a bed of roses immediately. But then if you're going to take the decision, I think you also have to be dogged in that there is also what they call it, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So you have to give yourself time, be ready to work hard, be ready to commit to the decision that you've made to JAPA, and it will end well. But above all things, please go on the right visa. The guy on social media, what's his name now, MD something, who said Nigerians get student visas to migrate. He was not wrong, but get the education so that you can have a better future. I think that's a great place to wrap up the show for today.
And at the end of the day, there's no place like home, right? So
not at all. Absolutely.
No
like I keep saying.
So we don't want to see, we don't want to be reading the stories of you, being deported and all of that, sleeping under the bridge, and you can come home, especially when you were living like a king here.
Even if you were not living like a king, but opportunities are here. And you will find people that, are willing to help you.
Yeah.
But as always, Mercy, it's been awesome spending time on the show with you today.
Thank
you so much.
Before
we go, do ensure that you follow us on Instagram at Wayshow Africa and Official Upgrade TV. You can interact with us. Drop a comment, like, share, and most importantly, don't watch Ways alone. Remember, your friends and family can enjoy Ways too, so tell them about it. If you missed today's quote, here it is again. The grass is not always greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. As always, we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Have a good evening.